The Bible. It's a collection of ancient texts, prophecies, poetry, history, and letters. It holds stories of kings, shepherds, wars, and miracles. But for many, the Bible remains an unopened mystery. Here at The Bible Explained, we're not just reading verses, we're exploring the cultural bedrock and the dramatic narrative woven through its 66 books. Hit that subscribe button and let the journey begin.
Today, we're talking about the man who wrestled with God. It's an ancient story, thousands of years old, but it asks a question that, honestly, feels more relevant than ever. What if your greatest fight isn't with some enemy out there, but with yourself? This is the story of Jacob.
No, really, let that sink in for a second. What if that thing that keeps you up at night, the conflict you just wish would disappear, what if that isn't some roadblock to your destiny, but actually the path to it? Because that's pretty much the core idea behind this story from, over 3,000 years ago. On a pitch-black riverbank, one man has this mysterious all-night battle that doesn't just change his life, it ends up defining an entire nation. So let's get into it. All right, so our story kicks off at a moment of absolute total crisis. Jacob is completely trapped. He's stuck between a past he can't escape and a future he is absolutely dreading. And right at this critical point, he's completely alone.
So let's really get a grip on Jacob's predicament, because he isn't just in a tough spot, he's in a vice. After 20 long years away, he's finally heading home. But the guy he's fleeing from is his manipulative father-in-law, Laban. And the guy he's about to face, that would be his twin brother, Esau, the same brother he cheated years ago, who is now coming at him with 400 men. The text puts it plainly. Jacob is very afraid and distressed. Yeah, I'd say so.
So, in a desperate move, he sends his family and everything he owns across the Jabbok River. He's trying to create a buffer, right? He stays behind, all by himself, in the pitch-black night. And then, suddenly, out of the darkness, a figure just appears. The text is super simple. It just says a man showed up. There's no talking, just an instant violent struggle. They're locked in this fight, wrestling for hours, all night long, right until the sun starts to come up. And this, right here, is the central mystery of the whole story. Who was this stranger? And what did this insane fight actually mean? Well, to find the answer, we can't just look at what happened on the riverbank. We have to look at everything that brought Jacob there to begin with. All right, to really understand what's at stake in this fight, we've got to rewind the clock about 20 years. See, Jacob's whole life, right up until this moment, has been one big struggle. It's a story of rivalry, of deception, and this constant, relentless need to be number one. He and his twin brother Esau were, total opposites from the day they were born. You had Esau, the firstborn, this skillful hunter, a real man of the open country, definitely his father Isaac's favorite. And then there was Jacob, a quiet man, dwelling in tents, his mother Rebekah's favorite. But their names tell you everything you need to know. Esau means hairy, which is descriptive, I guess, but Jacob's name, Yaakov, it means heel grabber. It's an old idiom for a deceiver, a supplanter, and boy, did he live up to it. Okay, so in that culture, the firstborn son got two big things. First was the birthright, the bechorah. This was all the legal and material stuff, a double portion of the family property, and you become the head of the family. Then you had the blessing, the barakah. This was different. This was spiritual, prophetic. It was a spoken word that determined your destiny, your power. And once it was said, it was irrevocable. You couldn't take it back. And Jacob, somehow, got both. First, he got the birthright. It's almost a cartoonish story. One day, Esau comes in from hunting, and he's just famished, absolutely exhausted. Jacob happens to be cooking some lentil stew, and he sees his opportunity. He makes this cold, calculated offer. I'll give you this stew for your birthright. And Esau, just thinking about his empty stomach, goes for it. He sells his entire future, his whole inheritance, for one bowl of stew.
But the blessing? He didn't buy that one. He flat out stole it. Years later, their father Isaac is old and can't see. So Jacob, with his mom's help, pulls off this elaborate deception. He puts on Esau's clothes, even puts goat skins on his arms so he'll feel hairy like his brother. He goes to his blind father and lies right to his face, saying, I am Esau. Isaac falls for it and gives him that powerful, irreversible blessing. When the real Esau finds out, he is so full of rage he vows to kill Jacob. And that's why Jacob had to run, kicking off that 20-year exile we talked about.
And that brings us right back to that dark riverbank. Think about it. Jacob, the man who has spent his entire life scheming, tricking, and stealing blessings, is now, for the very first time, in a raw, physical fight for one. So let's trace how this fight unfolds. They're wrestling for hours, and it's basically a draw. Then, the stranger does something, well, something not quite human. He just reaches out and touches Jacob's hip, and it's instantly dislocated. Jacob must be in searing pain. He's badly injured. The stranger says, "Let me go. Dawn is breaking." But Jacob, holding on for dear life through all that pain, he says the words that change everything. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So who on earth was this adversary? I mean, who has that kind of power? The original text is cagey. It just calls him a man. The prophet Hosea, later on, says it was an angel. Some traditions even say it was Esau's own guardian angel. But Jacob comes to his own incredible conclusion. He names the place Peniel, which means face of God, because he says, "I have seen God face to face, and my life was spared." And this face-to-face showdown, it leads directly to the most important moment of Jacob's entire life. The moment he gets a new name, and with it, a whole new identity. The being asks him, "What is your name?" And when he answers Jacob, he's basically admitting, "I am the deceiver, I'm the supplanter." But then, the stranger says something huge. "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel." And this is it. This is the core of the whole story. He's no longer defined as the heel grabber who gets by on tricks. His new name, Israel, means one who struggles with God. The struggle isn't gone, but it's transformed. It's not a sneaky fight against his brother anymore. It's a direct, honest struggle with God himself. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks had this really incredible take on it. He said that this fight was really an internal one. Jacob's whole life had been about struggling to be Esau. He wanted his brother's birthright, his blessing, his status. This all-night battle was the moment he finally struggled to not be Esau, but to just be himself. He had to finally let go of his brother so that he could be free to hold on to God. So that's a pretty huge internal transformation, right? But how does it actually play out in the real world? Well, we find out almost immediately. In that meeting with Esau, he's been dreading for 20 years. So the sun rises, and Jacob, who will now limp for the rest of his life, goes to meet his brother. He's expecting a fight, but the man who walks toward Esau isn't the same guy from yesterday. He approaches with complete humility, and Esau's response is just stunning. No anger, no revenge. Instead, he runs to Jacob, throws his arms around his neck, and these two brothers, who have been enemies for decades, just stand there and weep. And look at the specific things Jacob does here. It's incredible. He is systematically giving back everything he took. He bows down to the ground 7 times, a huge act of humility. He calls Esau my lord, totally flipping the script on the blessing he stole. And then, the biggest thing, he offers Esau this huge gift of animals, and he insists he take it, calling it his birkati, which means my blessing. He is literally, symbolically, handing back the blessing he stole. So what's the big picture here? What's the legacy of all this? Well, this story is about way more than just one messed up family healing. That single night on the riverbank actually forged the identity of an entire nation.
Because Jacob's new name, Israel, well, that becomes the name for his descendants, the children of Israel. The identity of this whole people is forever rooted in this one story. It's the image of a flawed man, a man who limps, but who is also blessed, a man who found his real self not by running from the fight, but by wrestling through the darkness and just refusing to let go.
So what does this ancient story have to say to us today? It suggests that maybe our biggest struggles aren't getting in the way of our path. Maybe they are the path. It tells us that our true identity is often found when we stop trying to avoid conflict and actually engage with it. You know, Jacob walked away with a permanent limp, a sign of his weakness, but that limp was also the sign of his greatest blessing. It was a physical reminder that his real strength wasn't in his clever tricks, but in his honest struggle. And that kind of leaves us with a final question to think about. We all have things we wrestle with, right? In the dark. Our past mistakes, our fears, our own identities. And this story seems to suggest that maybe the goal isn't always to win the fight, or even to get away from it. Maybe the whole point is just to hold on, to keep wrestling until the sun comes up. So it's worth asking yourself, what are the struggles that are defining you?
The Bible isn't just a history book. It's a living, challenging text. As you reflect on what we covered today regarding this topic, consider how this new context changes your reading of the verses. If you appreciated this breakdown, sharing it with just one friend who struggles with understanding the Bible is the best way you can support the channel. Subscribe for more, click here for your next explanation, and never stop seeking clarity. Until next time.